She was a woman who lived in the shadows, but her actions and encouragement to her husband led to the slaughter and deaths of millions of people during World War II. Lina Heydrich shunned the inner circle of the Nazi Party, and she was not one of the hangers-on to Hitler. She was devoted to her husband, Reinhard Heydrich, a man who was later known as the Butcher of Prague. But her role in history is one which was subtle, but had dire and devastating consequences for so many people. Lina Heydrich encouraged her husband to become a member of the Nazi Party and also to join the SS, the infamous paramilitaries. With this, she helped her husband prepare for a meeting or a job interview that would change the course of history and see her husband become one of the worst war criminals of the 20th century. In this video, we look at the wife of Heydrich and what she was truly like, and see whether she was one of World War II's most brutal women. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Lina Mathilda von Osten was born on the 14th of June 1911 inside the town of Fehmarn. It's assumed that she had a relatively normal upbringing, attending school and taking a job in the local area, but her life took off down a dark path in 1929. Lina's older brother Hans had become a member of the Nazi Party, who were rebuilding inside of Germany. This was years before Hitler would rise to power and take the position of Chancellor in 1933. Her brother then became a member of the SA, the Sturmabteilung or the Brown Shirts, the paramilitary thugs deployed by the Nazis to attack and beat political enemies and dissenters. Lina's brother spoke fondly of the group, and Lina then attended a party rally in 1929, and from that moment on, she was captivated. She saw Hitler speak for the first time, and then immediately joined the Nazi Party, becoming a member. Just over a year later, she met her future husband for the first time, Reinhard Heydrich. They met at a rowing club ball, and Heydrich himself at the time was a naval lieutenant. The pair moved very quickly, and then got engaged within a matter of weeks, but Heydrich had already promised to marry another woman, who he had been with for months, but he broke this off to marry Lina. With this, Admiral Erich Raeder then sacked Heydrich from the Navy, and he was at this point left unemployed. Heydrich refused to accept this, but he now needed somewhere to go, and this is where Lina Heydrich's entry to the history books comes. She was the one who persuaded Heydrich to look for a career inside of the newly formed SS, a group of paramilitaries who were initially tasked with being bodyguards of Hitler and high-ranking Nazis, and Heydrich needed a push to attend an interview. It's claimed that Lina may have actually set up the meeting, as she spoke to a friend of the family who knew the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, and then Heydrich was given an interview. Heinrich Himmler wanted to establish an intelligence and security service within the SS, which would become known as the SD, the Sicherheitsdienst, and he needed someone to run this. Lina Heydrich packed her husband's suitcase and sent him off for the job interview with Himmler. It's not known at the time how much of an ardent Nazi Heydrich was, but it would be fair to say that within their marriage, that Lina was probably at this point the more ardent Nazi of the two. Heydrich's meeting with Himmler changed the lives of thousands, if not millions. After this interview, Heydrich became the head of the SD, and he returned home to Lina, and he was now rapidly rising through the ranks of the SS, but Heinrich Himmler himself was enamoured by Heydrich. For him, he represented the ideal Aryan SS man, but to Lina, her husband, represented a way in which she could obtain more power and possibly wealth. She later went on to admit that her husband had never read Adolf Hitler's book Mein Kampf, unlike her. Over the next few years, Lina and Reinhard had 3 children, and her husband became a very senior figure within the SS and was working daily with Heinrich Himmler, and he became Himmler's number 2. Lina allegedly found her husband difficult at this point, and she later claimed that, and I quote, "The most characteristic trait was that he, Reinhard Heydrich, was a man of few words. He never talked about something or discussed something just for the love of talk. Every word had a concrete meaning or purpose, had to hit the point. Therefore he never said even one word more than necessary. My husband was vain. He hated nothing more than being dressed inadequately. That did not apply to his wife. She might have worn the most impossible dresses. He thought them all right. But he was a man who was starting to plan the genocide of millions of people." One of Heydrich's most infamous roles in the Second World War and history was that he chaired the Wannsee Conference, a meeting held on the 20th of January 1942. He oversaw this meeting and declared that it had been called to search for the final solution to the Jewish question. With this, Heydrich was in charge of overseeing plans for the extermination, slaughter and murder of all the Jews in Europe. At the meeting, it was decided that millions would be slaughtered inside of extermination centres and within concentration camps, with sites such as Treblinka and Majdanek aiming to kill thousands every day when they were set up. Lina described her husband at this time saying, and I quote, "He required absolute obedience as he himself obeyed without questioning. Orders from Hitler were obeyed absolutely. My husband saw in him the one great man. I sometimes ask myself what his thoughts would have been if he had seen the bitter end. He thought him to be the one and only, being the one who could lead the German nation to greatness and glory." Let's remember that she was the one who was the more ardent Nazi to begin with, and that she had pushed her husband to working within the SS and the Nazi Party. It was her encouragement that led to her husband gaining that position. Heydrich was also later sent to Prague to oversee the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, and whilst here he became known as the Butcher of Prague. Lina and the children went with him, living in castles and living very luxuriously. Inside of Prague, her husband terrorised the population, and he had people publicly executed on the streets, strung up from lampposts and tortured to ensure that they remained in terror and productive for the German war effort. But Lina's world came crashing down on the 27th of May 1942. Whilst Reinhard Heydrich was en route to work, he was attacked by two Czech SOE-trained agents who threw a bomb at his car and severely wounded him. Within 10 days, Heydrich succumbed to his injuries, dying from sepsis. Lina was present at the funeral and attended the huge ceremonies, including one inside of Berlin, and was present when her husband's body was buried inside of the Invalidenfriedhof, a large military cemetery, of which Heydrich's remains still are left there today. Following this, she was given a large estate, and Himmler had a number of slaves working on the house, and Lina Heydrich abused them and beat them badly, it's claimed. A year later, her eldest son was hit by a truck and died on the estate's grounds, and she was furious and wanted the driver of the vehicle and all his passengers shot. After the war had come to an end, surprisingly Lina Heydrich was cleared of denazification proceedings, and she was allowed to receive a pension, and was entitled to her husband's huge pension, as he was a German police general when he was killed, meaning that she became a very wealthy kept woman. She remarried, but then operated her first husband's summer house as a restaurant and inn until it burned down. She continued until the day she died to try and defend her husband, claiming that he had not been involved in the Holocaust, although history and the facts stated otherwise. Now, the reason why Lina Heydrich can be considered one of the most brutal women of the Second World War is that her impact on history was one which led to the slaughter of thousands. She encouraged her husband and set up the meeting between him and Himmler, and from that moment on, her husband became one of the most infamous Nazis and war criminals of the Second World War and the 20th century. It was her encouragement and suggestion, and Lina Heydrich was someone who had been an ardent Nazi for many years, and even tried to cover her husband's crimes years after his death. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.